word is commitment. I was going to say patience, but commitment. To see this thing through. We're just about done with it, and we'll be a company like no other for this 21st century. And already we're blowing the doors off with product growth. Milo said a little bit earlier that we had a record month this last month, the biggest one. Well, yeah, it's a gigantic month. We're having tremendous growth, and we've been having it now for 3 months or so. We were growing, but now we're just growing exponentially because of what we're doing with this. And in order to do that, with a lot of things we had to do, we decided to do them all. I wish we hadn't perhaps bit off because we got more than we could chew, but we've got it all chewed up and digested now. So your diligence and your all your hard work and your dedication to hanging on is really appreciated by us. And it's I'll tell you what, in a month or two, after we've got everything is flowing so well and you see how much growth's going on, you'll really be glad that we did it, because we wouldn't be able to do the things that are going to happen if we haven't done what we're doing right now. So anyway, back to you, Aaron, for a minute.
Well, and Tom, I second that. Everybody needs to know that we've done a phenomenal job at kind of riding through these storms, and you guys, again, because of that commitment, have done a phenomenal job helping us get there. And again, we want to be built for the future, and that's really what I'm going to talk about tonight, because with Tom, I think about vision, and I think about Tom and the way that he was talking about the age pill. And so, Tom, let's just dive into it. I mean, the bottom line is, over the last 31 years, you've come out with some of the most dynamic products in the history of health and wellness. You've brought products to the market that people have never seen before, they've never understood before, but the way that you explain it and help people understand it is something that is really unreal at times. I think it's hard for people to comprehend how your brain works. I've got a little bit of it after 9 years, but I got to tell you that people still say, I have no idea how he works, but I love to hear him talk. So I want to know, and I think a lot of people want to know, that out of all of the products that you have ever formulated in the history of time, the last 31 years, how did you know the age pill, in your opinion, was going to be the number one product that you've ever released in your history of formulating products?
Well, a lot of that has to come with not just being able to think it through and see things that are there and the potential of what they are. It comes with the experience of what you've done. And over these years, you see all those dimensions that come through. The one thing that people want in life is energy. And the second thing that they really want with that is they want to not only have energy, they want to have strength, stamina, and they want to look good, they want to feel good, and they want to live that way for a long, long time. Now that covers, other than perhaps up through teenagers, virtually everybody. But the point is, teenagers and children and things like that have got a lot of the factors that we would all like to have, but it's long gone or diminishing greatly. So you can see there's a huge market there. But over the period of years, the people have come along with things and say, well, you take these herbs, they'll help you, you'll be healthier, they'll build your immune system, you'll live longer with it, or you have the potential to live longer, or they'll come in and say, well, we have antioxidants and oxidizers, or free radicals, as they call them, rust you, just like steel will rust with water. And so as a result, we have products that are antioxidants. And everybody had a bottle of this and that and the other, and they were all saying ours is the best. And so how could the average person really guess? But there were some companies that got very big on antioxidants, but there was a lot of competition and hard to define what was exceptional. So those are some examples of what led me to where it was, because what got me in the nutritional industry is over 30 years ago, I found out a discovery had been made in Ming Dynasty Emperor's tomb. In his sarcophagus was formula that was buried with him, and he was a Taoist, which means they believed in immortality. And this formulation was called Chin Chin Bao. Bao means treasure. And he had it buried with him because he thought it was the closest thing that could come to making a person live for a long, long time. So as the record went back, and I looked at it, there were a couple of Chinese physicians to the emperors that lived. One lived 239, another lived 246 years. That's a long time. And yet it's just not people saying it. Chinese have got about the only country of any length that has an unbroken chain, and their history has never been lost. Their technology has never been destroyed. So when they came on and we're talking about these, man, of course they they were the court physicians, and the emperors wanted to have everything they could, for themselves and somewhat for other people. But they, when they had their 150th year birthday, they recorded it in Chinese, and the records are still there. And it goes through documenting their lives year by year, and so it's pretty undeniable these people lived that long. And so that's a big thing. Would you like to live that long? But one of the things that happened is when they got to that age, they kind of looked like they'd lived to that age. So there are a lot of things that were happening to make them live a lot longer, but they're aging. It takes place and things like that. So from that, I started building and developing and looking and following the research, and there were certain things that were limiting factors, the holy grail that you needed for this or for another product or something else. And then I'd been accumulating enough about 5 years ago, just after resveratrol, the ingredients in Eternity, came out, they started making some major discoveries because science had advanced enough to where they could look at things in great detail at the cellular level. And so a discovery came out, and it was so powerful, and I had been looking at it for quite a bit of time, but there was nobody to produce it, and then it caught on. And when it caught on, Harvard Medical School took it to NASA and said, look, this is what we found, and it can create the energy of when you were young again. And with that, it speeds up everything, all your repair mechanisms, energy, strength, stamina, all of those things. And so NASA took a look at it, and they called it the immortality pill. Well, if you listen to all those things, you hit all the hot buttons that people really want that they can't get with any other product. And so I looked at this, and I thought, okay, they're right, but there are actually, I discovered some things that were superior to this, or that worked with it to make the product work much, much better than just what they're doing with that. And the complexity on the cellular level has to do with the stem cells, and that's what produces all the cells that you're using up cells and getting rid of them every day. And so when I saw that was the case with this, I thought, here is one that virtually everyone that starts to get over the age of 25 or 30, and maybe some even younger, would want, because it does about everything. There's no magic bullet, as they say, not a single ingredient, but all of the components that were necessary to take a stem cell and return it to where it was indistinguishable from a young cell and function like that again was there. And the byproducts were huge. Skin, hair, vision, brain, muscle definition returning, energy of stamina, all of that going right off the charts, and skin, not only skin growing thicker, but hair growing thicker and faster, and dark color coming back into it. All of those things, and most of all, they were all the things that we wanted, and you could literally, now, we went from the dimension of slowing aging to anti-aging, and we never got quite to ending aging, and now with this leap, we have gone beyond that one, and while there isn't anything to end aging, or at least there wasn't, now there is with this, but we are actually reversing aging and growing younger, and that market is massive. With the number of people that are doing it, it is a tremendous discovery. So that's what got me going on this. And that's a lot to say for this first part, but I saw this, the timing was right, the products were everything a person wanted, so that's what brought me into it. So I'll go to your next question, Aaron. I'll be a little more brief.
Well, no problem. I mean, everybody's loving it. I'm getting text messages like crazy. So, Tom, here's a question. I went throughout Europe. Every meeting that I held in 6 countries and 7 cities, I said to them, who in here is on the H pill? And literally, no less than 50%, but I would say 60 to 70% in most cities, most of the bigger meetings at least, all raised their hands and said, yes, I'm on it. And then the next part of it was, and I feel so much energy and I'm feeling so many different things in my body. And the thought was, so what is it about the H pill? How does it work inside the body? Not talking about glycation yet, not talking about lipofusion, but when we talk about the molecules and holding 3 electrons and on, maybe you could explain that. That'll help people understand, trigger a thought to understand how it actually works.
Well, I'm not going to get very complex because this is extremely complex, and it'll give you brain cramp just trying to figure it out. And it's the most intensive product I've ever had to research, and I'm researching other people's research. There are at least 6 Nobel laureates that have worked on some of these theories on what some of the components of the age pill can do, but there are others in other categories too that have done it. And so what the age pill is a total of a lot of different discoveries and systems and ingredients all put together in synergy so that they work to do some things to the stem cell that we all want to have happen. And you have to say it properly, but here's the most important thing to say real quick. Understand that aging is not a disease. The Food and Drug Administration does not say anyone dies of old age, because everyone dies. Sometimes it's a condition, you'll hear them say coincidental with age, but it means this kind of condition kicks in that kills them at a certain age. But people die by some sort of a condition that's been created, a disease. They don't die of old age. In fact, if we were like from birth up to when you get to be about in your early 20s, you're actually you're growing younger, stronger. You're getting bigger. You're not a 20-year-old and a 2-year-old. There's a lot of difference in size and energy and abilities and all of that because they have grown even younger, bigger, better, stronger. Now they hit that point and they start going the other way. So let's think about that, what's happening. If aging is not a disease, what is it? It's simply this. It's decay and degeneration. In other words, your systems are decaying as with time. It would happen with your house or your car or everything else. If you didn't maintain it, it decays away. The more maintenance, the better you keep it, the worse it gets. And then the other thing is regeneration. You're generating a lot of new cells every day, but if you're losing more than you're generating, then you're into degeneration. So that's all aging is, decay and degeneration. So when you take a look at that, it all begins at the stem cell level. So the stem cell produces new cells, produces all kinds of proteins and hormones, numbers of things like that. The cells that they produce go out and do things with it. It takes in all kinds of nutrients. It does all kinds of metabolic processes. It has waste, and it has to create energy. It creates the energy that fuels your entire body, not just stem cells, but the others too. So when you look at all that, how are you going to talk about how all this works? It is so complex, but let's just talk at it like this. You had a car, and you bought it, and now you've got 200,000 or 300,000 miles on it. What kind of shape is that car going to be in? If you haven't been even if it had been maintained, things are just plain worn out, and they're not solid. They're in poor working condition together, and you're to the point where it's just going to absolutely die on you, just like what happens with our bodies. And the one thing about a car, when it's brand new, it runs pretty good, but when you've got 100,000 miles on it, it doesn't run so good. 150, it's deteriorating more. It is in decay and degeneration. So our cells in our bodies, particularly the stem cells, do just exactly the same thing. And you have components within the stem cells. You have a motor in your car where you have mitochondria in the cells and in the stem cells that they're the motors of the cells that create the energy that drives the cells. See, so that's similar. Takes in fuel, takes in oxygen, oxidizes it to create energy. Metabolic process, just like in the process of running a car. You ignite the gas and it puts the exhaust down the tailpipe. You have to get rid of all that. And what does the car do? You pick up speed and you can deliver things in a truck and do all kinds of things like that. But as it becomes broken down, it becomes less and less. Well, so if, let's say you took that old car, that lumpy, and you went through it and you did a complete overhaul of the motor. How would it run? I mean, you'd be working with the basic motor, just overhauled it, replaced the parts that were bad or repaired them and did that. Now you'd have a motor that would run by new. You could do that same with the transmission, the differential, the braking system, all of those types of things. You could take care of the body on it that might be dented and paint oxidized and things deteriorating in upholstery and all of that. You can rebuild all of that to where it looks like new. And so you could take that older car and you could return it to new, couldn't you? And then what would you be driving? Would you be driving a 300,000-mile car that was going to run like it? No, you would be driving a car that was like brand new, and you've got 300,000 on it, and you're on to your next 300,000. That's the analogy to think about with the age pill, because there are three basic things, a lot of sub-factors. creation of energy is one. The second is you accumulate a lot of cellular debris and garbage left over from metabolism. Doesn't get out, and it's like oil in your engine. If you didn't ever change it, pretty soon it'd be sludge and it'd break down. So that's the cellular accumulation of garbage, energy production, and then the last one is things just wear out and rust, oxidize, and so deterioration of all kinds of systems. So the cell pill is the H pill is designed to do just exactly this, to handle all three of those systems together. Because if you give it energy, but it's full of all kinds of cellular garbage, it's not going to function as well as it could. And if the systems that are supposed to be working, including the mitochondria creating energy itself, are all in states of serious decay and degeneration, you're still not going to get the performance that you want. But if you can go through it, if you can support, and the stem cells, there's the beautiful thing about it, has the ability to repair and regenerate itself. That is unique. So now you can do that. The systems are already working. They're already doing it. They're already creating energy. So now you can come in, you can support them so they can repair themselves. And you're not stimulating anything. You're just providing super nutrients that work for those systems that makes them really work at phenomenal rate. And they repair, they regenerate, and then they start growing. Those that are dormant can become active again. Those that have died off can be replaced by more cells, because the cells have the ability to duplicate themselves when you have the right types of nutrients in it. And so if you got that and it's all cleaned up and everything is repaired, then what's the big thing? You want to put the pedal to the metal. You want to get the energy out of it. So we have a very complex system to do that. It goes through something, and I'm going to get technical. It goes through like what's called the Krebs cycle. It's about 30 steps to create energy. And they come out with this one molecule they're talking about, and they said, yeah, it creates energy. It's an important component. It's the molecule that's there that carries electrons around to the mitochondria. And I won't get very with it, but it's like our whole bodies work on electricity, the body electric, if you will. Think of it that way. If it wasn't for electricity, if we could touch you with a wand and took the electrical charge out of your body, it'd be a pile of ash, just like that. And so all of our impulses and brain thoughts and everything, all the signals throughout our whole body and within the cells themselves are powered by electricity. That electricity has to be generated, and that's the energy. That's why this is such an electric product. But in the process of doing it, there's everything slows down, and they found that if they fed it with one type of ingredient called NR, it would carry more energy into the mitochondria, where it creates the energy and converts what's called ATP. And so because it had an electron and the body didn't, if the cells were making it anyway, but now if you just fed it more, then you'd have more going into the mitochondria to create it. So that was the idea behind it. But even with that, the systems, if they're not repaired, they're not working well, and that type of thing, or they're cluttered, you're going to have an improvement. There's no doubt about that, especially in repair and duplication. But what we did is we took a look at that, and we found out through some research, I found 2 compounds that can work much better than that one, and they can work in coordination with it. And some of them, actually it's 3 compounds, and they are all in that Krebs cycle, but they're all after that ingredient, although we do have that ingredient also, which we're using. But all 3 of the others, and the 4th one right there, come together where the total of all the parts is greater, or the sum is greater than the total of all the parts for performance. In fact, some of those as this NR goes around and drops off electrons, that's where you get the term electricity, as it drops it off, then it's gone. Some of these will actually be there to hand them off another electron to it, and it'll just recycle it and do it about 3 times. So you're going to get about 3 times the energy in the same molecule coming through. So what does that mean? It means it's going to recycle faster. You're going to get 3 times the more energy. You're going to get that much more repair. You're going to have all those things happening because we have a system in there to feed lots amounts of this NR ingredient. But then we have some systems in that will support the cells, which they're doing anyway, to make NR, but to make large amounts of it, perhaps more than even when you were a teenager again. And with that, you start getting energy like you can't believe it. And that's one of the things that's most important, is it just goes right off the charts with energy, strength, stamina. You see it all happening because we have found ways to not only do the same type of thing they talk, but do it other ways to make it more effective, make it much more abundant, so that this energy level that you have is just phenomenal. And the longer you use it, two things happen. You get more energetic and you get younger. And that's the theory behind it. So with this kind of thing, growing younger, and as you live longer, you can now grow younger, have more energy, more strength, more stamina, more vitality. And most of what they're doing in the testings, they're finding with this over a period of time, almost all biological systems return to where you were 20 again. So that's my answer to that question. Pass it.
I mean, it's interesting because every single person raised their hand. Do you have more energy? Do you feel like you have more endurance? Do you feel like you have more stamina? And literally every single hand went up that it was currently using the Age pill. And I know we've got a few groups on here tonight that have had massive success with the Age pill so far, and they are seeing such fast growth as a result of it. You know, buy one bottle, buy two bottles, get started on it immediately. You're going to start to feel it. I remember hearing Bill White, we talked a little bit about it, where he said, look, I got hit with this Age pill, and the next thing I knew, my energy was off the charts. And so obviously, Bill, that's a good explanation of why you felt the way you do and why you have so many committed, convinced people. Obviously, you've got Brad and Dr. Jerry and Donna and all these people that are on the call tonight that are so excited about this, but we're seeing so many people grow. And Tom, that's the self-evident part about it, is that energy cycle that people are starting to feel again that they may not have felt for years. But one other factor is my last question for you, because we want to try to keep this thing to less than an hour. One last factor is something that's been kind of interesting for me, and I know not for you because you already know all this stuff, but for me to hear it from so many people around the world, and so many people posting pictures up on Facebook and showing social media photos of the before and after being on the Age pill for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, etc. Now we're calling it, and we're hearing people call it, and especially, as you mentioned earlier, what gets women more excited than anything is to have that beautiful, radiant skin that they've always admired in others, or maybe even in themselves when they were younger. And guess what's happening? This ingestible skincare is now starting to bring it back. How does that work? Help us understand that, Tom.
Well, the one thing about it is what's on the outside is what you see. What's on the inside is what you don't, of course. That sounds pretty fundamental, doesn't it? But if this is regenerating stem cells, it does it in every single part of your body. And by supporting stem cells, brain function can return. You can produce more new brain cells. You can have much higher levels of activity. Brain volume diminishes in size. By the time you're in your 70s, you've lost 25% of your brain size and a lot of the functionality. You lose 8 to 10% of your body, your biology every 10 years. So in 10 years, you're 8 to 10% less of what you were, and then from that point, you lose another 8 to 10%. But say it was 10%. Now you're losing another 10% on top of where you were only 90 to start with. Then you lose another 10% where you're only 80%. See, so it's phenomenal how this builds up. So when it goes in and starts working, it just doesn't work selective places. It works everywhere. And the skin is what you see, and the skin is the fastest duplicating organ that we have in our body. So when you're young, you'll produce new skin cells, and they'll migrate to the surface and be gone in about 28 days. And on average, and the skin's thicker, it's softer, it's better color, and as it gets older, it gets discolored. You get a lot of spots in the skin. It takes maybe 120 days for it in an older person, but 60 to 120 is very common with people, and so their skin is thinner, it doesn't look as good, it doesn't regenerate as well, and suddenly you just flip it on its head because you come in with all this superfood for it, like ingestible skincare. Yes, that's one of the aspects of it. And so the first indicator that you see or you feel is energy coming to you. Then the next things are the things that are more visible. Of course, you have things like stamina is something else, and you notice that you're thinking better, and all those things are happening within it. But on your outside, people will look at you, or you'll look at yourself, and you'll see your complexion and skin and age spots, pigmentation, hyperpigmentation, all of that sagging skin just seem to go away. Why? Because it's feeding the systems that produces lots of new cells and turns them over quick, so you can have a lot thicker skin, a lot better quality, a lot more cells in it, and that's what happens. And same thing happens with hair. You'll see an increase in hair growth rate. You'll see an increase in pigmentation, even if it's gone gray or white. Those systems have been oxidized and destroyed away, but the cells have the ability to repair themselves. Remember, so if you do that, then what's one of the first things you see? If you got a lot of gray or white or total gray or white, you start seeing all this dark hair come in. So those are the indicators that are visible to us on the outside, and you see all of that happening, and it happens pretty quick.
Well, so Tom, I mean, that's a good indicator right there, and I know there were so many people that were talking about, you know, as women start to age and they tend to wear blouses that show off their décolletage a little bit, and that sun continues to damage and wrinkle. We've seen so many people come in and say, I can't believe that I'm seeing literally changes in that as well. So that's part of it then, is that process of taking out some of that damage that occurs as a result of oxidation, that occurs as a result of some of the other factors that happen with sun damage and environmental exposure, et cetera. That's what it's doing, is going in and repairing?
It's not doing the repairing. The cells are doing the repairing. And the oxidation, the discoloration, where women will particularly get it on their chest and neck area because there's so much direct sunlight hitting it from that angle. And what happens is it's just like when steel rusts, it goes from shiny to a dark brownish color. And when you have that much intensive UV light going through the skin, which is so exposed in such direct channel towards the sun rather than, with other body parts where they're, even face, it doesn't have the same angle as it does. And when it does, it goes in and it oxidizes a lot of the components within it, and they start turning yellowish brown, and that's hyperpigmentation. It's really an accumulation of debris that the cell can no longer get out, and it gets discolored with the sun oxidizing it. So that's the answer. So the cells have the ability to go through, break that with the age pill. All the mechanisms are there. They can break that down. They can produce more enzymes. They can get rid of it, and they can produce more normal cells to replace it, all because the system will do it on its own, but you got to have these super nutrients to make it happen.
Well, I absolutely love it. Tom, my phone has been blowing up. I'm getting text messages, private messages, different messages on social media, et cetera. And I'm telling you, this has been a great call.